Why is wealth so critically important? Your wealth will determine where you live. Where you live will determine where your children go to school. Where your children go to school will determine the quality of your children's higher education, and the quality of your children's higher education will determine their lifelong earnings.
Yo, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Black Excellence Daily. I'm your host, Sean Croxton. Thank you so much for tuning in on a Monday. We got Dr. George Fraser on the show today, Dr. George C. Fraser on the show today. And he's going to talk about a couple different topics. The one that I think is the most important that I really want you to tune in for is when he talks about why wealth is important. Wealth is hugely important, and I don't want to steal his thunder on that, so I'll let him get to it in a second. Now, I do want to point out something that he talks about in the beginning of this clip, which is leadership. And when he defines leadership, part of that definition is a leader will encourage his or her followers to ultimately take personal responsibility for growing and owning their own lives. Personal responsibility. And when I look out into the Black leadership landscape, I don't see a whole lot of personal responsibility being encouraged, right? It's always somebody else's fault. Never has anything to do with us and our beliefs, our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, our attitudes. It's always somebody else who's doing it to us. And what that's called is a primarily external locus of control kind of leadership, which means that events that happen to you, that transpire, are primarily determined by external factors beyond one's control. It's luck, it's fate, it's other people's actions, it's the white man's fault. It's the system, it's the media, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans. It's never our responsibility as individuals or as a group. It is always some outside force wreaking havoc on our lives while we just passively take it and have no agency whatsoever. The leaders say, oh, it's their fault, and I'm going to come and save you. Then they get paid millions of dollars to go out there and tell us how we're not responsible for anything, and they're going to save us from it. So remember that. External locus of control. Now, on the other hand, we have internal locus of control, which is where you believe that you have control over your life and your outcomes. Real leaders encourage the latter. They encourage their followers to have an internal locus of control, to take personal responsibility, to not wait around for somebody to fix everything for you, to not wait around for the system to change. Now, in their favor, I will say this about the Black leaders out there. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I think one of the reasons they don't encourage personal responsibility is because they're afraid of being accused of telling Black folks to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, which I can kind of understand, but at the same time, just to live in reality, if you want to change the circumstances of your life, you're going to have to do some pulling up by your bootstraps. Because the opposite of that is waiting around for somebody to pull you up for you. And that's not really working very well for most people out there. So, of course, you can't do it by yourself. You're going to need some help, but you're going to have to do some work on your own. You're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to look at your beliefs and your thoughts and your reactions and your responses and your behaviors and your actions. Look at your outcomes. Look at your fruits, right? And say, okay, here are my results. Okay, what needs to change for me to get new results? And that's really not up to anybody else but you. Of course, you're going to need help again. But, one of my favorite quotes is, if it is to be, it is up to me, right? It's really up to you. You have to take that responsibility. Now, one more quick point before we get to Dr. Fraser. When he gets into the wealth part, the generational wealth part, I want to point this out. I teach this in my Money Mind Academy program, is you will never have what you resent. So if you resent rich people, it will be impossible for you to become rich. You know, when I was growing up, I used to hear a whole lot of like us versus them talk, right? It's us, and then there's like the greedy rich white people. And when I started my own business and I kept sabotaging myself, I kept hitting this wall, right? I would get to a certain place and I'd be like, nah, and I'd pull it back. Then I get there again, I'd be like, nah, and I'd pull it back. Now, one day it popped for me. I had this epiphany and I was like, oh, I keep sabotaging myself because I don't want to be one of them, right? I don't want to be one of those greedy, miserable, rich people. I don't want to be a part of that group that I've been taught to resent. And just to go a little bit deeper on a brain basis here, there's a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, your ACC. And its job is it's your conflict detector. So whenever you have a conflict, such as I want to be rich, but I also resent rich people, that light, that red light on your ACC, your conflict detector, starts blinking. And then that sends a message to the fear center in your brain, your amygdala, which makes you start to feel anxious because you're in a conflict. And then that sends a message to your prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain that's responsible for like setting goals and making plans and carrying out those plans. And this conflict will shut that down. So you can't walk in two different directions at the same time. You can't get or create generational wealth when you hate families that have generational wealth. When you're saying, oh, they got a leg up because their parents invested in them, that's generational wealth. Oh, they got a nice house because their parents made the down payment or bought it for them, their first home. Well, that's generational wealth. If you despise those things, then you're never going to have them. It's funny, like we want generational wealth, but when we see examples of generational wealth, we kind of shit on them. Pardon my French. It's confusing, right? It's confusing, not just for me, but it's confusing for your brain. Your brain's like, wait, I don't really understand. You want it, but when you see it, you don't like it. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. And so I'm just going to keep you exactly where you are. That's how the brain works. So I got more to say about this, but I have talked enough today. We'll talk more about this later on this week. Dr. George Fraser is coming up.
Leadership is the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations and ultimately taking personal responsibility for growing and owning their own lives. To be a leader is to be awake and alert and to be dissatisfied at all times. Yes, we have come a long way, but we have much further to go. Therefore, I am not happy, but I am motivated by a positive anger directed towards positive change. What do I know about change? I know that you will never change that which you tolerate, and you will only change when you get angry. People will not change when they see the light. They will change when they feel the heat. And we are feeling the heat. Cultural minorities in this country, middle-class people are feeling the heat. And you were born to assuage and to help and to heal. And that's what you do, and that's what we do. Leadership is influence. Who are we influencing? We're influencing our children, because if our children cannot see the future, they will not pay the price. That every single thing we do, brothers and sisters, we do it for our children. Just as everything is our parents did, they did for us. That's leadership. Leadership is action. It's not some appointed position. I see your mouth running, but what are you doing? My daddy taught me many years ago, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. What are you doing? That's what leadership is. Leaders understand that everything begins with words. And from words comes consciousness. From consciousness comes passion. From passion comes action. From action comes change. And yes, this is evolutionary, not revolutionary. We didn't get this way overnight. We're not going to solve the complex issues of this great country overnight. Let me say that another way. We have a tradition in my family. We wash our own laundry. We raise our own children. We clean up our own dirt. Why? Because we rob ourselves when we refuse to choose to take responsibility for our own. We must all learn to stand straight and to love ourselves and to own our own lives. The power to be happy or miserable lies within us. When we give away our power to choose, look what they made me do, or it's the government's job, we should be very sure we know what we are getting in return. We are responsible. Leaders understand why wealth is important. We've been talking about that for 3 days, but so many of our communities have no clue on why money and wealth is important. Not so that we can buy more stuff. We don't need any more stuff. In the African American community, I say all the time, we are the only culture in the history of humankind that put political power before economic power. And last year in the Black community, we elected over 9,000 Black public officials, and we're still at the bottom of the educational and economic heap. What does that mean? That means that you cannot do it by politics alone. How dare we put that kind of pressure on our political leadership? But again, we're no fools. We were born at night, but not last night. We didn't come over here with the last drop of rain. We do understand that we're all impacted by the politics of inclusion, right? And we're all impacted by public policy. So yes, we must continue to use the power of our vote to empower those who empower us. If they do not empower us, get them out of there. If they do not empower us, don't work for them. Why is wealth so critically important? Now listen to me on this. Your wealth will determine where you live. Where you live will determine where your children go to school. Where your children go to school will determine the quality of your children's higher education, and the quality of your children's higher education will determine their lifelong earnings. And your children's lifelong earnings will determine where your children live. And where your children live will determine where your grandchildren go to school. And where your grandchildren go to school will determine the quality of their higher education, and that ultimately will determine their lifelong earnings. Do you see the cycle of poverty here? Wealth is important. Why? Because in a market-based economy, in a democratic capitalistic society, at the end of the day, the only color that really matters is green. So until our pile of green is as big and as high and as deep and as wide and as leveraged as any other cultural group's pile of green, we will never be considered an equal at the table of democratic capitalism. Why is wealth important? Because wealth gives you unlimited choices. And yes, God wants us to have unlimited choices. And then it is the management of our choices that is the essence of living. Choices that give us the freedom to choose where our children go to school. Choices that give us the freedom to choose where we live and work. Choices to give us the freedom to choose where we play. Bible tells us, Ecclesiastes 10:19, money answers all things. Money and wealth is important. Why? Because when we finish pontificating ad nauseum about our issues, somebody's got to write a check. Our Jewish brothers and sisters, God bless them, can write a check. We must be able to write a check. Why is wealth important? I'm going to give you a little secret here. I don't want you to tell anybody I told you this. The tax system was designed for the landowner and the business owner. Why? Because landowners and business owners wrote the tax laws. So if we are not landowners, and in the African American community, we own the fewest number of homes per capita of any cultural group in this country, and we came over here on the Mayflower. If you are not a business owner, and by the way, there are 14,000 pages of tax codes, which is really institutionalized corruption, which is designed for the business owner. And we own the fewest number of business African Americans of any cultural group in this country. And again, we've been here 400 years. So, if you are not a landowner and a business owner, you cannot fully exploit the American tax system. The tax system will exploit you. You will pay more taxes. So we must stop resenting rich and successful people, even when we don't mean it, because it cannot and you cannot attract what you resent. The distinctions between how very rich people think and how everyone else thinks is very clear. The very poor think day to day. The poor tend to think week to week. The middle class tends to think month to month. The rich think year to year. The very rich think decade to decade and generation to generation. And the primary goal of the very poor, and poor is survival. The primary goal of the middle class is comfort. And the primary goal of the rich and the very rich is freedom, the intergenerational transfer of wealth, and they will do whatever it takes to experience an abundance of freedom. Wealth and transferring that wealth to succeeding generations is critical.
That was Dr. George C. Fraser. You can learn more about his upcoming Power Networking Conference. It's happening in November at powernetworkingconference.com. And you can watch today's talk on YouTube. It is called Dr. George C. Fraser Speaks at First Financial Security, Inc. Leaders Convention. All right, who we got coming up this week? We got Inky Johnson on tomorrow, Robert Woodson on Wednesday, Steve Harvey on Thursday. Then we wrap things up with Willie Jolly. So I hope you tune in all week. Please leave a rating and a review for the show on your favorite podcast player. Really appreciate that. Helps the show grow so more people can listen to it. And yeah, have a good day. I'll see you soon. Peace.